Wanted to mention we've got a few more minutes with Kent Millington. He's the brother of our own Steve Millington, who's joining us this morning as well. And it is 26. It is coming up on 22 minutes after 8 o'clock. Bill Colley, too, on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And we're talking modular nuclear reactors, I think, for lack of a better description. And these things will be constructed at Idaho National Laboratory. And Mr. Millington, the question we were just kind of dancing around with just before the break was, will these things be safe? Because the last time I think we did this with you about a year ago, I started getting messages from people saying, Fukushima, Fukushima, Fukushima. But there's no real comparison here, is there?
There really is no comparison between the light water reactors and the systems that are associated with light water reactors like Fukushima or 3 Mile Island or Chernobyl, and the modular reactors that are being designed now. Now, what happens is when we have these accidents like Fukushima or some other of the accidents, scientists learn a great deal about what causes the problem. And so they immediately begin to look at ways to solve the problem that creates the explosions and the contamination. And so these smaller modular reactors are designed to circumvent the problems that the very large nuclear reactors have as part of their construction. And so these small modular reactors are designed to be much, much safer. Now, when you move to thorium, and the thorium design that we have, that is, it's just impossible for it to explode. One of the things that happens with the light water reactors is that when there's a meltdown, the water that is used to cool the reactor itself then begins to separate into hydrogen and oxygen. It's the hydrogen that explodes. And then all of that contamination is then put into the air as a result. Well, there's no water associated with the thorium reactor. It operates at ambient temperature and ambient air pressure, and so there's no explosion even possible with the thorium reactor that we have and the other modular type reactors that are going to be built and tested at the INL. So they're really wonderfully safe, much, much safer than the large systems that were built 30, 40 years ago.
Now, J.K., your organization is arguably not the first on this landscape. I understand that China is exploring this stuff and India is exploring this stuff. How far behind those countries are we?
We are actually not very far behind them at all. You mentioned China as one of the countries that has a system that they're looking at. The Shanghai Institute of Applied Physics is the group that is doing that work in China. I have personally visited with Dr. Chen at the Shanghai Institute of Applied Physics in Shanghai, and I am aware of the progress that they're making. They're working feverishly to try to do this. They're throwing an awful lot of money at it, and they're making some progress. But we are not behind them hardly at all. In fact, we think that the reactor that we have designed is actually better than the one that they have designed, and that we're ahead of them in that respect. But China's working on it. The Netherlands actually has a big thorium project that they're working on for the European Union.
We got a couple of minutes to go. Just quickly, what are we talking about with cost for each unit?
Well, the cost per unit is going to be, we're estimating these costs at very high, but they would be something like $1 million per megawatt as an estimate. Now, we've got to yet build these, and then once we build a few, then we begin to build more of them, and of course that brings the price down. you could build say a 5 to 10 megawatt system that for about $5 to $10 million.
But that
Now, if you do a 10 megawatt system, you're able to handle between 60 and 70,000 homes.
60 to 70,000 homes
For about $10 million, and then you would have some associated costs for fuel, very little fuel replacement over a period of 30 years, so that what you wind up getting is electricity for somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 4 cents per kilowatt hour.
Holy cow!
Perhaps even less than that.
Okay,
They're very economical. These modular systems are designed now to take care of some of the problems that have been faced with the larger light water reactors, both in safety and in terms of construction costs.
Well, we're going to ask if you can stick around for a few more minutes because I think we have some other questions.
So we're getting pretty close to a hard break here, and so J.K., can you hang around for a few more minutes?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Be happy to.
Check will be in the mail. Don't worry. We've got more coming up with Steve and Kent Millington in just a couple of minutes. It is 23. And we're talking about, again, Idaho National Laboratory, which will be the place where these thorium reactors are built. I got another question about size. And again, just pointing out, they would fit on a flatbed truck to be shipped to various parts of the world, or really the country in this case. More details on all of this in just a couple of minutes. We're at 23 and approaching 8:30 on Magic Valley this morning and News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Wanted to mention our guest, Kent Millington, joining us this morning, and he's talking with us about these proposed miniature nuclear reactors that would be built at Idaho National Lab and then shipped out and generate incredibly cheap electricity. And again, they would fit on a flatbed truck, and a couple of those would power all of Twin Falls. 8:34, we're at 23, and of course, Steve Millington, Kent's brother, with us too this morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX with Bill Colley. And I know, Steve, we've got just a few minutes to go. You had a couple of last questions.
Okay, the questions, J.K., that I want to ask are concerning maintenance and operation. The thorium is readily available on the Earth's crust surface, and then compare the costs about your small nuclear reactors to solar power, wind power, and other sources of green energy that we hear so much about from the incoming presidential organization and John Kerry and his green energy programs. How does this fit in with some of their things? So where do we get the thorium, and how does this kind of a system compare with hydro, solar, and wind?
Thorium is readily available in the crust of the Earth's surface. There's huge stockpiles. There's been estimates of 1,000,000 years of thorium available on the Earth today. 1,000,000 years of thorium power could be produced out of the thorium that's been identified on the Earth. Now, that's probably a little on the far side, but there's plenty of thorium around, both in the United States and in foreign countries. Coming up with the thorium is not a big problem at all. Now, comparing the thorium power to the wind and solar, once you install one of these reactors, you get about 30 to 35 years of activity before you would even have to begin to seriously maintain or replace. Again, replacement cost is not that high, but with wind and solar, you've got the estimates that I have seen. by the people that have studied this pretty carefully are that the wind and solar power would be 3 to 4 times more expensive than the thorium power. So actually, you get in a smaller footprint, you get much more electrical production at much lower costs using these thorium or other modular reactors, as opposed to the popular wind and solar panel kind of electricity. I've heard it said by some physicists that in order to provide New York City with the power that it needs, you would have to cover most of the state of Connecticut with solar panels in order to provide the electricity needed for just New York. Now, that may be a stretch, but certainly when you talk about thousands of acres of solar panels being put into Arizona to provide the electricity for just part of Phoenix, then you get a sense of the size of the footprint that's needed versus a few acres for these small modular reactors.
JK,
and the cost of the electricity is much lower.
I have another question. We have talked that these small modular reactors could be placed side by side, or they could be placed 2 or 3 miles apart. Have you done any studies to determine which might give you the least expensive approach?
Well, if you put them together side by side, you then have a similar issue of the length of time or the distance that you have to push the electricity. And so if you were to strategically place them around, say, a Twin Falls or a Salt Lake or wherever it happens to be, if you strategically place them around, you minimize the electricity loss by having them separate. But you could put them together and take advantage of the existing electrical distribution system.
On that note, we've got to wrap it up.
It's been a fascinating 45 minutes. Thanks, JK. We'll probably have some more conversations about this, but this has been really interesting stuff.
Well, there's great opportunity with INL in your backyard and the work that's going to be done there over the next few years. It's a great opportunity. Thanks for having me this morning.
Hey, thanks, JK. See you now.
JK or Kent Millington joining us. And Steve, we'll see you again in 1 week.
Yes, I'll be back.
On December 8th. We've got a short break. It's 8:40. We're at 23 on News Radio 1310 KLIX at newsradio1310.com. Bill Colley with you on Magic Valley this morning until 10 a.m.